the camera. Give it off, down.
Hey everybody, and welcome to If You Like X, a new feature here on Screen.com where we take a look at a movie that's coming out and give you some other movies from the same genre that you might enjoy. This week we're talking about Seven Samurai, coming out on Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection. It's a bold, thrilling tale of action and camaraderie. You've probably seen it, probably seen some other Kurosawa movies like Yojimbo or Sanjuro. Now these are all part of the chambara, or sword fighting genre. They're very popular in Japan in the 60s and 70s, but they've kind of fallen off in popularity since then. They're often set in the Edo period or the early Meiji era, often concerned with corruption of the ruling classes. They have solitary, unimpeachably honorable heroes, and they often have really, really dark endings. As in Seven Samurai, it's often not swords that kill these heroes, but gunfire, which kind of tells you a little bit about the era that they're going through. Now, I really, really like samurai movies, so if you like Seven Samurai, maybe you'll also like some of these other movies that I consider favorites of mine. First up is Zatoichi, or more accurately, the Zatoichi series. There are like 25 of these movies. They all star Shintaro Katsu, a really famous actor from, obviously, the Zatoichi series. There aren't really samurai films because he's not a samurai. He's a blind masseuse. He's a kind of a Japanese cross between Daredevil and the old Incredible Hulk TV show. It's really formulaic. Zatoichi kind of roams across the land. He gambles. He shows off his swordplay. He encounters a lot of corrupt ministers and Yakuza, exposes them, fights their minions, saves the day. He breaks hearts across the land. Women love him. Men want to be him. And these movies are never as densely plotted as Yojimbo or Sanjuro or anything like that, but they're generally pretty upbeat in tone, and they're really enjoyable too. But the best one is not the first one, but it's the first color installment. It's Zatoichi 4, The Fugitive from 1963. This movie, Zatoichi finally comes across a former lover of his who he's been searching for in the previous 3 films. But unfortunately, she's married to a really cruel Ronin, a wandering samurai, who's later hired to kill Zatoichi by a group of Yakuza who he embarrasses earlier in the film. So haha, complications ensue. But this movie ends in a huge fight. Zatoichi kills like 100 dudes. It has an awesome duel with a samurai at the end of it, so I really recommend this film. You can go check it out. And if you like this one, you can add the whole series to your Netflix queue at once. It's all one big series, but you're gonna have to set aside a month or so to get through them all. Zatoichi, you might know as it was remade in 2003 by Beat Takeshi. Not a huge fan of that film. It's got CGI blood. And there's also a movie called Ichi a few years ago that stars a female blind swordsman who kind of was raised by Zatoichi, and it's not an official thing, but it's kind of enjoyable as well. Next up is Samurai Rebellion of 1967, which stars Toshiro Mifune as a vassal in a very large clan. Now, the clan dynamic is what this movie kind of explores, and he's honor-bound to obey whatever his lord orders him to do, or his family is basically going to be ruined and thrown out. Unfortunately for Mifune, the lord is a huge dick. He forces Mifune's son to marry one of his mistresses. Then after that happens, the family wants to say no, like that's a horrible thing to do, but then the son and the mistress fall in love actually, and they have a kid. They actually have a really loving marriage, which Mifune is kind of really happy by because he never loved his wife and all this other stuff. So the rest of the family, and even Mifune's wife, who's also a huge dick, want to go along with this. They don't want to ruin the family, but Mifune decides that he's going to make a stand, and that leads to a huge fight. It's two men against the world, back to the wall, swords blazing. Really, really fun stuff. And it's a wonderful, wonderful performance by Mifune, who finally makes a decision and he goes through it. He's been indecisive his entire life. He's been henpecked by his wife, and he decides, no more. The line must be drawn here. And Tetsuya Nakadai appears in this as well as Mifune's good friend and only rival in sword skill. Now, speaking of Tetsuya Nakadai, Harakiri from 1962 is another amazing examination of the feudal dynamics that take place in this era. It takes place in an era of peace, actually, when many samurai are out of work and forced to roam the land as ronin. Unfortunately for them, that often led to crushing poverty, as is the case for Nakadai's character and his son-in-law. So when Nakadai's daughter and grandson fall ill, Nakadai's son-in-law decides to threaten to commit seppuku, or ritual suicide, at the house of a lord, a scheme that often resulted in the lord paying them a little bit of money to just go away. Unfortunately, they call his bluff and make him kill himself. And Double, unfortunately, he had actually sold his swords before and had bamboo fake swords. And they discover this and they say, no, you gotta kill yourself with your bamboo sword. And it's incredibly painful and it's an awful scene and makes you really feel bad for this guy. And then later on, it gets worse, even worse. His wife and his son die from their illness, and then Nakadai decides, you know, I gotta take matters in my own hand. So he doesn't storm the castle or anything like that. He actually shows up, asks to commit seppuku himself, but first he wants to tell his story. So he goes through the movie. The whole movie is kind of an interview process where he's telling these guys, you know, this is what happened. You guys are dicks. You forced my son-in-law to kill himself. Then my daughter died. Then my grandson died. And then he finds the people who actually made his son-in-law kill himself. He cuts their top knots, which is an act of shaming. And at the end of it, of course, he fights a million dudes, and it's really depressing. But I love it. Lastly, we have another movie starring Nakadai and Mifune. It's called Sword of Doom from 1966 and it's directed by Kahachi Okamoto. Stars Nakadai as a chillingly evil master swordsman who opens the film by forcing a rival's wife into having sex with him in exchange for throwing a practice match. Except that the guy finds out about it, divorces his wife, and intends to kill Nakadai during the match. But Nakadai instead manages to kill him with a wooden sword and finishes off his day by slaughtering most of the guy's clansmen. It's an amazing scene. He's just walking down a forest, killing dudes left and right. And that's when it's just getting started too. Nakadai is really, really amazing here. He's a total psychopath and he keeps a steely glare all throughout the entire movie until the very end. Has an amazing final fight sequence, but even before then, we're treated to some really, really good scenes with Nakadai. He becomes an assassin. He tries to ambush Mifune, who's another master swordsman, in this snowy graveyard scene, and Mifune is just ripping through dudes left and right. And the final fight scene is like 7 minutes long between Nakadai and dozens of other swordsmen inside a burning inn. So definitely check it out. One of the best last shots of any film I've ever seen. So these have been a few of my favorite samurai films. Don't forget that Seven Samurai is out on Blu-ray this week from the Criterion Collection, and feel free to leave some comments in the comment box below this video about your favorite samurai movies as well. Thanks.